Let's go. Yo. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. Never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast. And that's facts.
What's up, Chicago? Welcome to the Chicago Sports Podcast, Monsters of the Madhouse. I am Dustin Jones. Below me there, I got Sean Lugo, and joining us here is Brandon Duplessis. What up, gentlemen? How we doing tonight? Lovely evening to be in Chicago, be a Bears fan. How we feeling?
Oh, it's a beautiful day. Bears did some big things, moving and shaking, and we're feeling better about 2025.
Hell yeah. Brandon, how you feeling, boss?
Feeling all right, man. It's been a long Monday, but we're here at the end of it, man. It's always fun to talk Bears after a day with some action. So,
yeah, man, it was hard to keep up with everything. I mean, I got my texts blowing up, my messengers blowing up, ESPN, everybody's Bleacher Report, everybody just throwing shit into my phone all day, these notifications. Hard to keep up with everything that happened, but we're going to be able to do that because we're just going to kind of narrow this down to the Bears and what they did today and what they've done leading up to today as well. So, I mean, in regards to what they've done today, Trax put together a little highlight video for us. I'm going to go ahead and play this to kind of start out the show, just give you guys an idea of who we're adding to this roster and what they're capable of. Let's go ahead and do that.
Ladies and gentlemen.
There we go. Grady Jarrett, Dale. These guys are going to be coming to Chicago, bringing their talents to Lakeshore. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys blow up backfields like we just saw on those highlights there. Thanks again to Trax. Thanks to everybody for joining us. I want to say what up to B Walls, Trapakeepa, Erica. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you. Saw you with the 4 stars show a little earlier. Bear down, everybody. Keep the comments coming. Like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Tell everybody how much you love it. We are here every day of the week. Sean, what are your initial? Listen, we got Drew Dalman too. We got the center. We got the center to put in between these two guards we traded for. Things are looking good in Chicago. The trenches are being addressed. Sean, how you feeling, boss?
I'm loving it, man. I mean, I said a little bit ago, I thought it was a smart approach. You know, he's building a competitive team here. The draft just became a little bit more flexible. We can move back now. You know, he's solidified some key areas through this free agency. You know, with a strategic approach. You know. Now with 3 picks in the first 41, you know, we have a golden opportunity to bolster the roster a little bit. You know, maybe take the best player available, maybe trade back. Like I said, we got a lot of flexibility here across the board at all different positions. You know, they can focus on offense. They can focus on defense. Some reinforcements on both sides. It's going to be – we can even add an extra weapon if we want. You know, we just did a mock draft where we were able to add Jaden Higgins, you know. Like,
and replace Keenan Allen, who is clearly not going to be here after these moves that have been made, right? Like, there's a lot of options and ability to go in different directions, Sean. Yeah. And that's awesome. That's awesome. It's an awesome position to be in. And Ryan Poles has put us in that position, Brandon.
Yeah, he didn't just buy talent, he bought flexibility. And I think he also identified very early on in this offseason, possibly even before he hired Ben Johnson, guys, where the talent lied, right? I mean, we were thinking free agency, we were thinking the draft, but I mean, this guy's now making trades for players you wouldn't have dreamed were available. And he's identified that I thought as well, man, the majority of the talent was players existing in the league. And I think this is a very deep draft when it comes to pass rush and running backs, especially. Those are two positions of need the Bears have. And now he can approach the draft, he can approach those positions in the draft. It was really, really, really well done. Obviously, really well thought out and early planned by this Bears organization.
It was surgical. It was surgical. Ryan Poles, in all of his genius, and much maligned at some points, Ryan Poles went out and said, I'm going to get ahead of this free agent market. I'm going to trade for some guys that are going to change my offensive line. I can have my 2 starting guards. I don't have to compete with anybody outbidding me for these guys and just get them on my roster. And then I can go into free agency knowing exactly the areas I need to attack and address. And then you saw in free agency, it started out immediately. Dalman is now a Chicago Bear. So like the aggressiveness, the intentionality, and the specification with which he attacked this, you got to have some uber confidence as a Bears fan, and it's got to be changing the way you're thinking about Ryan Poles in this offseason versus this past season and how things went, Sean.
Yeah, because with this approach that he took, he had a leadership and experience. With the veterans and Thuney and Grady Jarrett. Obviously, all the rumblings coming out of Atlanta are the fans are really upset, and his teammates are upset that this guy was a leader in the clubhouse. Obviously, we know who Joe Thuney is. These are players that are going to help change the culture, lead by accountability, bring some toughness to this roster. Which is crucial in building a winning mentality. And I'm really, really happy with these moves. I think, as you said, Dustin, they're very strategic. He's building this culture. He took the right steps here, and they're all short-term deals. I don't think any contract that he signed was more than 3 years, was it?
That's the other thing, right? Like he's not tying himself down to disastrous contracts that you could be regretting and still be paying in 2 years after you cut somebody. These are 1 year and out, 2 year and out things. These older guys, he's not tying himself to them to where he's going to be looking back on that contract and saying, shit, I can't make this move because I made that move. And that's now biting me in the ass. That's a huge thing too, Brandon. The flexibility for the future, not just the present.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also given himself the ability, like we know that we all love Tooney guys, but we know he's a little older, and you've given yourself the ability to draft a potential replacement for players, right? You have so much flexibility in this draft. If you there's nothing that's off limits, right? If you're in the second round and the best guard on your board is still available, why not? There's no restrictions here at this juncture.
Exactly.
And I'm seeing some guys in the chat that are throwing names out like Tyler Warren. He can do this now. The 10th overall pick in the draft can be the best player available. Absolutely can and should be.
Yeah, 100%. Go ahead, Sean.
I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, man. I would love Tyler Warren at 10 if the Bears were to stay there. But, I like the trade back scenario as well. But if we do stay there, I do like this flexibility that they have. They can take Tyler Warren and add another weapon to this arsenal for Caleb Williams, soon to be number 13, Caleb Williams.
We love Tyler Warren until we draft him in a mock draft and then realize that we haven't addressed the edge. We haven't addressed the offensive tackle. We haven't addressed the safety. And we're like, shit, maybe we could have waited on this tight end position. And listen, I love Tyler Warren as well. And I think he's going to be a damn good player in the league. I don't want to miss out on another Brock Bowers. But at the same time, Poles is doing a great job of being very conscientious of the best players he can get at these positions, but these positions that he's attacking, they do matter, and he's trying to address them one at a time in a very diligent way and a very, again, almost a surgical kind of way. I think this – what do you guys think that this is – that we look back on this offseason and say, like we see the Eagles, they just won the Super Bowl, and you start looking back and you're like, well, then they got that guy, and they drafted this guy. And then they were able to go sign this guy because they had these guys under contract already on rookie contracts. Do we see this being the start of that type of story for the Chicago Bears, or am I just daydreaming here, getting a little ahead of myself?
I think it depends on two things. The one things that successful teams do, Dustin, you've mentioned this before, mentioned this on the show earlier, is you find players that outplay their contracts in free agency. I think that's important. You got to get more productivity than most of the teams that didn't pay these guys anticipated. And then the same with draft, right? If you're taking a Cooper DeJean like the Eagles did at pick 40, when you're making moves like those in the draft, as well as some of the guys you've signed in free agency, that's when you really start to see it all come together.
Yeah, 100%. And it looks like these things are going to come together because the flexibility going into this draft, Sean, gives Poles a myriad of options. But if you were Poles, what would you be looking at? We've signed Deo, signed Dalman, traded for our two guards. So we got our interior offensive line set. Darnell Wright is a mainstay. Braxton Jones is solid enough to keep, but you still want to look to replace him, right? So there's that option. Defensive end still needs to be addressed, but you've addressed the defensive tackle position. You've addressed your trenches about as completely as you can until this draft. So what are you looking at draft-wise, Sean, with that number 10 pick?
It's kind of wide open because the method, you want to draft players that are going to take this seamless transition as these veterans approach the end of their careers. So for me, I'm looking probably still at O-line because we got Jackson on a 1-year deal. Dalman technically is a 3-year, but could be a 2-year deal. Joe Thuney's 33 years old. So I want to take a forward-thinking approach that balances the immediate competitiveness with long-term sustainability. So I'm still looking to draft O-line early in this draft today, this year. And even if we were to trade back like the draft that we just did, and we could still end up with a Simmons and a Jackson, now you're replacing these players that are either coming to the end of their careers or their contracts are up.
Or somebody's going to outplay him, just straight up outplay him. Simmons, if the Bears were to draft him, he could just outplay Braxton Jones. If they're both healthy and they're both playing at their highest level, Simmons could just supplant him in this season coming up. So, that's an option. Brandon, what would you be leaning towards if you were Ryan Poles? You've just kicked free agency's ass and for all intents and purposes. You're looking towards the draft a little bit. There's still more to be done in free agency, but what are you thinking with that 10 pick, man?
Well, I'm certainly looking at how improved I think each unit is, Dustin. You've said it, you've hammered this home that you turned your greatest weakness into your greatest strength with the offensive line. I think the offensive line will go from wherever they were ranked. I think it was in the late teens. It was actually higher than most people would have expected.
They're a top 5, top 10 offensive line.
I think they went somewhere in the top 5, and I think your defensive line still has a lot of room for improvement. I'm looking for pass rush, and I don't mind if it's on the edge or in the middle, Dustin. And I know you just signed Jarrett. It was a great signing, but I still want more.
So Derek Harmon, Mikael Williams, Landon Jackson, who in the second round. But with that 10th pick, you're looking at Mikael Williams. You're praying to everyone that you can pray to that Abdul Carter might fall to you. Mason Graham might fall to you, right? Did I mention Walter Nolan? Did I say that already? Like there's some options there at that defensive.
Grant and Nolan for sure. Yeah, a lot of depth.
Yeah. So it's gonna be fun to see, Sean.
In that trade back scenario, Kenneth Grant would be someone I would seriously consider. That guy is an athletic specimen for his size. And I'm not all out on Derek Harmon. I really like how he came along during his college career as well. So
Guys,
I would just continue to build depth in both trenches so we don't have to deal with what we've had to deal with the last few years.
Where you have to go somewhere else and replenish, where you're replenishing from within. Yes, 100%.
Learn from the Philadelphia Eagles.
Because you're always going to pay more on the market. That's shown today in free agency. Yeah. People are getting overpaid like crazy. Poles has actually been frugal by these free agency standards in terms of the money he's handing out because everyone's getting overpaid. You don't want to have to keep doing that. Who's your favorite signing of the day for the Bears, guys? You can include the trades from last week, but what do you think is the biggest deal for the Bears in terms of who they've added to this roster in this offseason period up to this point?
I would say Dalman, and I know it sounds it's probably the favorite pick. It's the consensus, but Dalman most importantly to me because let's say this draft had 30 potential starting centers.
Saints re-signed Chase Young, by the way, 3-year, $51 million deal worth up to 57. Just got done. Sorry, Brandon.
No, it's all right. I don't love the potential. I don't love the idea of having to force a rookie into the starting role at center. I think it's good to have a veteran at that position with a young quarterback, especially. So solidifying this center position with somebody who's been doing it in this league and is still young, guys.
Yeah, hell yeah. It's hard to go wrong there, Brandon. Sean, we got a couple people throwing out Grady Jarrett in the chat. What are you looking at?
I like Joe Thuney just because everything he brings, experience, leadership, championship mentality, a winning personality. I like he's going to help the culture of this Bears roster an organization just flip on his own by himself, by what he does. And you know that just by Kansas City. He was voted team MVP last year on a championship team. And we've sat here for weeks and talked about flipping the culture, flipping the culture. This is a guy, along with Grady Jarrett, so I don't want to sell him short. These are both two guys that come in here and immediately flip the culture. And I know Grady Jarrett hasn't had success as far as winning championships, but he brings a winning mentality. You can just tell by the outcry in Atlanta with him leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the signings were good. I think the Dalman one is the obvious answer, like you said, Brandon, because you're completing this interior
Correct.
wall that you're trying to build in front of Caleb Williams.
I do like Dalman.
Of course, you were advocating him very, very highly going into this free agency, and we all were to an extent, because we understand how important it is to keep that pocket clean for Caleb Williams, so he has something to step up into. That was the biggest issue last year. He kept trying to push outside because there was nothing to step up into. Caleb is capable of stepping up into the pocket.
I think he preferred it.
Yes, he does. One just didn't exist. And what the Bears have done is identify guys who are great pass blockers at their position. Highest pass block win rate percentages of some of these offensive linemen in the league. Thuney is the number one over the last 2 years. Jonah Jackson was number one this past season on a limited snap basis, right? And then Dalman was ninth out of all the centers if he would have qualified at a 95% pass block win rate. So the Bears have identified that these guys will protect Caleb Williams. The run blocking still remains to be seen, but like these guys aren't as good run blockers as they are pass blockers. That's the truth. But I think they can still get it done. What the Bears have done is identify what their biggest need was, which was to protect Caleb Williams while he's throwing the football, and they went out and did it. What are you smiling at there, Sean? What do you see?
It's just hopefully Will Jimbo Covert Campbell will be there at 10.
I mean, someone of that ilk, like I'm not against Kelvin Banks, guys. I'll just say this. If Kelvin Banks is there at 10, he keeps falling back and back. And this guy is like that overlooked kid who just does all their homework. They do everything you ask them to do. They always are on time for school, and nobody really notices it because they just did their job. They just did their job that entire time, and the parents are always giving the attention to the guy who causes them some problems. But Kelvin Banks is a consummate professional, and if you take this guy at 10, he is immediately better than Braxton Jones as your left tackle.
Yeah, and he's also pretty well touted, testing an area you aforementioned. Run blocking.
Yeah,
the guy can run block.
Yes, and he's a good pass blocker. He's got great technique. I mean, it's just an all-around great player. I'm just throwing that out there because I have noticed that he seems to be slipping on a lot of people's boards, and I just don't understand why, because this guy has just done everything that you've asked him to do. Chargers reached an agreement with former Steelers running back Najee Harris on a one-year deal. One-year deal, Sean, worth up to $9.25 million. That's huge for the Chargers.
I don't remember who it was, but a writer I was reading earlier this week called that out.
I'll tell you this.
It makes a lot of sense for Jim Harbaugh on that offense.
That just lets me know that Jim Harbaugh is probably still drafting a running back this year.
Well, the one-year deal, I mean, that is what it is, but they had a lot of turnover in that offense, kind of very in that team in general in terms of the roster. They've had to make a lot of cuts, kind of very similar to the position Poles was in. We're now in like going into the fourth year of this thing. Are we seeing this thing turn around? Does this free agency and the way that they're attacking this thing show you that they finally feel like it's time to go for it? Because it felt like it was time to go for it last year, and they fell flat on their faces. Do we think it's happening this year, guys?
I do. I mean, I think they're going to be a much more competitive team. They're going to at least have some better coaches. They're going to shore up a lot of things that they didn't. He took care of the trenches. They're just going to be more competitive, more complete. They're going to look like a football team, which at times last year they just did not.
Much better plan in terms of how you win football games, the way they're approaching this offseason.
Game plan, I mean, just everything. It just feels better. Whether they're going to be, that tough schedule the Bears got, those road games are just brutal for the Bears. Mm-hmm. But I do think they'll be able to be competitive, and I think that goes a long way with Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams is a competitor. He likes to win, and now he's going to have a clean pocket where he can step up. With these guys, as you pointed out a little bit ago, that was the main thing. Your two guards and your center now create a zone for him to be able to sit in the pocket, go through his reads, and make some accurate passes. This is going to be huge, 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 huge. It's going to look so much
Caleb's development. Yes.
To me, it also projects trust in Caleb Williams. They are being aggressive now, especially financially, because they know Their franchise quarterback is still on his rookie deal, which says to me they anticipate to give Caleb Williams a major contract when his contract is due, which says to me Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles trust wholeheartedly the quarterback they got to see play last year behind a really bad offensive line.
Well, the other side of that, Brandon, too, is you want to be in the position where you have to pay that quarterback. You want that quarterback
That's
to
what
succeed.
I'm saying. They're
right?
anticipating to give a max
Well,
contract.
not just
to a quarterback.
anticipating, making a game plan around him to make sure that happens.
They
Not
have the money.
anticipating,
Yeah.
right? Giving him
Yeah.
no excuses. Like, hey, you put us in a position
you
to
don't-
make us have to pay you. Here's what you need. We're
You
going
don't
to
wanna-
give it to you.
You don't want to get the declined on the credit card when you
Yeah, exactly. It's bad for Caleb and it's bad for the Bears if he is not that guy when it's time for his second contract. So the Bears are trying to do everything they can now with the money that's available to them to make it to where that's a no-brainer for them and for Caleb when that contract does come up. And that's a very good point, Brandon. The Najee Harris thing makes me think about the Bears because that was a guy that I floated for the Bears potentially. And I mean, it's something they could have done. 1 year, $9 million. There's your power back right there. Now that's off the board. That's not going to happen. We weren't really expecting it to happen. Where do the Bears go from here? Because Ben Johnson does need that power back in this offense. DeAndre Swift is not it for an every down back. I love DeAndre Swift. I love him in a role where he can get out to the outside, be your gadget player, break off some big plays, but keep some fresh legs. Who's our power running back, guys? Is there somebody in free agency? Are we going for a J.K. Dobbins, or has he already been re-signed? I didn't catch that if he did. Or is it draft time? Is it draft time for a power?
It's draft time. You go get someone, and I'm going to say something that's pretty unpopular, but I hope it's not Ashton Genty. I know everyone is super high on him, but I just don't like where he ran, and those numbers are really, really nice when you play against a bunch of people that won't be in the NFL.
B. Walls is with you here, Sean. B. Walls is with you here.
Yeah,
he says, as good as Junty is, I hope Raiders pick him at 6, so we won't have to pick him at 10 out of emotions.
I agree 100%. I mean, here, and I know I love Caleb Johnson, but give me Caleb Johnson, who ran against some of the best defenses in the country last year and rushed for 1,700 yards, not in the Mountain West against 90% players that won't, or maybe even 95 to 98% of the players that won't ever see the NFL.
He's another guy that you can make that argument that I made with Kelvin Banks, Sean, where he's just showed up and done his job, and he's kind of getting overlooked, right? Like Caleb Johnson's getting pushed behind some of these other guys that are coming up from behind him, where, at least from the fans' perspective, when they're talking about guys, Caleb Johnson is not the sexy pick, but he could be the right one.
And Dustin, I'm just saying, like, give me a Trayvon Henderson, give me a Judkins, give me someone from a power conference that showed me he can do it against NFL talent on a regular basis. Because the thing I took away from Genty was that bowl game where he looked just average against Penn State. He did not look like a top 5 pick in the NFL. That's
My thing is Genty at 10 is way too rich for my blood because I believe there are running backs who are better or just as good as him in the second round, like kind of what you're saying. Quinshon Judkins is my preferred guy, Brandon. Do you think the Bears Trayvon Henderson, I don't think really fits the mold of what the Bears need. I think he's
kind of the same as
DeAndre Swift. And he plays kind of the same role, I think. But Brandon, who are you looking at to get this power run game going for the Chicago Bears behind our new and improved offensive line?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm looking at the entirety of this class, and I think that's why it's important that you do when the offseason begins. Is this running back class is so strong and so deep. You can honestly get a top 5 player at this position with your second round picks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why it's important to analyze how deep a draft is at what positions. But that's not, and I'm going to I think they should, and I think they could. I think they will draft a running back. I do want to say this. If the guy is going to, I think he's just going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as this offseason goes on. I would not mind because he'll be on a limited snap count. God, the chat's going to burn me for this. I wouldn't mind Nick Chubb on a 1 year. What's that going to cost you?
You got a Chubb for Chubb?
Yeah, I do. But the guy's going to be able to play, 40% of the snaps need be. I think it's a guy that could remain healthy if he's not thrown into a role where he's expected to do too much. But I do like drafting. I like the idea of drafting a running back more.
I want to say this. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Darius just joined us, but everybody in here has been killing it. You guys are awesome. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Darius, I'm not giving props to Mike Green and Gray Zabel. Personally, I'm not. I'm not an advocate of taking either one of those guys. We actually just passed on Mike Green with the option of taking Landon Jackson in our mock draft for 4 stars because I do respect Landon Jackson doesn't have the production, but I think he's a much better translation to the NFL. Genty is a good player. I don't want that to get lost in this, guys. I really like Genty. I see shades of Barry Sanders in this guy when I watch his highlights. I do. He bounces off guys, keeps his balance, stays low to the ground, breaks a lot of fucking tackles,
and can burn when he's running.
And he's
top
fast,
speed.
and he can catch the ball from the backfield. He's a great player, Darius. I'm more out on him because I think you can get guys that are very comparable to him, or maybe better, depending on who you're talking to, later in the draft, in the 2nd round. I don't want to spend the 10th pick on that running back unless I think that running back is worlds away better than the running back we're talking about.
Or if you're in a very weak class, right? If this is a very weak running back class, and that's
Genty is an obvious number 1 guy, I'm going for it. Yes.
And I will say this. I don't think he's going to be an NFL bust. I just don't think he's going to be as good as everyone thinks he's going to be. And that's just my personal opinion. I've been wrong before. Maybe I'll be wrong this time. I see 3 or 4 backs that can be better in this draft than Ashton Genty. That's just my opinion, though.
I think he'll be as good as he's projected to be. I just think the guys behind him are not too far behind him. I do love Ashton Genty's patience. The patience is what impresses me. He stays strong. He waits for things to open up before he hits the hole. And even as it closes, like Dustin said, he's elusive enough to bounce off bodies and keep his feet moving. But Sean, I agree with you. I just don't think the drop off to Caleb Johnson's and guys like those is tremendous. And I think the drop off between the 10th pick and the 35th is tremendous, right? So the talent doesn't fall far off, but the draft does. And I think that's
Eric. I will say I think the drop off is huge from a Genty to Cam Scatterbo. I don't want to touch Cam Scatterbo. I don't want anything to do with this guy.
Dustin does not
Toby
like
Gerhart 2.0 is not a guy I am interested in. Keep him. Let him go somewhere else.
Forks up.
Quinshon Judkins, I would much rather go with in the 2nd round. Travion Henderson, even if we're going to talk about him. Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson are all guys I would much rather have.
Devin Neal.
Devin Neal is a guy that will be available in the 5th or 6th round, man. That's the reality. So like if you feel that, if you were Ryan Poles, Sean, and you felt that strongly about him, you could wait. That's kind of the point of what I'm saying. Like I don't want to jump on Genty at the 10 pick when I don't if he's like another worldly player to me, then I do it. But he's just not that to me. I don't think it's a big difference between him and these other guys.
What up, Batman?
What are we missing, guys? What haven't we touched on when it comes to these Bears? Any other signings from the day we broke the Najee Harris one here. Chase Young just re-signed. What other signings happened today? I mean, maybe not Bears related that you guys are interested in. That
DJ
Justin
Reed
Fields,
to the Lions, man.
DJ Reed to the Lions impacts the Bears.
Big one, dude. That's a big one. I'm not worried about the 2 linemen that went to the Packers. Whatever. Banks and who was the other guy?
Banks and I don't
even remember. It wasn't significant enough for me to remember.
Something with an H, Higgs something or
Hobbs, wasn't it Hobbs?
Oh, yeah, Nate Hobbs. There you go, the cornerback. Yeah,
cornerback. Yeah,
not gonna work anymore.
Justin Fields signed a 2-year, $40 million deal with the Jets. The myth of Justin Fields lives on in New York.
Unpopular opinion. I hope he shows out in.
It's not an unpopular opinion. We all want Justin Fields to do well. I just don't expect that, and I certainly don't expect it on the Jets. To be quite,
I said it on 4 stars, guys. It went so sneaky under the radar. We all read their signing. I don't know if anyone ever actually looked too deep into the details. The Eagles have done it again. They got an all-pro player for a guy that they didn't allow to hit the market because they paid far less than I think he would have received.
Zach Bond was a steal when they got him, and then they just got him again on the re-sign on a steal too for the Eagles. Yeah, so I mean, and like you said, DJ Reed to the Lions, that impacts their secondary in a major way. DJ Reed was a very underrated corner in this market, and I think he was the best corner. The Lions got him on a steal of a deal, 3 years, $48 million. The Justin Fields thing was interesting to me. All these trades, everything that's happening.
Their killer remains in the north.
The gosh darn Nick Bolton taking a hometown deal to stay in Kansas City pisses me
That's
off.
what guys do when they're on dynasties, Sean. When they're on teams that win, that's what guys do, and that's something you can't really overlook. And you hope that the Bears get to the point where they have guys taking team-friendly deals in order to stay and play with Caleb Williams. That's what you hope. That's what you aspire to. And this could be the start of that, guys. What we're looking at here. the Bears made some great moves today. The Bears are really trying to build a foundation on the true main principles of winning. And I agree with MP here. Left tackle at 10. I am not beyond that at all. I would love a left tackle at 10. Complete the offensive line rebuild right now. Just do it. And then draft some guard depth. And then still draft some guard depth, a Donovan Jackson in the second round. Still do that. Because that guy can replace either Thuney or Jackson, whichever one is gone after this year. Because that's one of those guys. I don't think they're gonna resign both. I mean, fingers crossed. Hopefully they both play well. There's a lot of options and flexibility and possibilities for these Chicago Bears, and I am super excited. Cocaine Bear says, "Give me some Ohio State guys." Did we not just do that in our mock draft? We were like taking all the Ohio State guys. I mean, you see teams like the Eagles. Brandon, you just brought them up. Okay, Georgia can be our minor league system. Let's just tap into that. Let's find these winners in college and just filter them into the NFL.
Cocaine Bear, don't get Dustin started on Judkins.
You know what? I've always said this, and I always say this. I like players drafted from power conferences that play in big games and big moments and show out and shine. I'm not a small school kid. I know some of them do show out and turn out okay, but give me winners that win at every level and put them on your roster. You have the blueprint right in Philadelphia. It's right there. They had 6 Georgia Bulldogs. I mean,
however, there are some like Membu out of Missouri is going to be a stud.
Missouri is a big time school.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC. I'm talking about like Marshall and Toledo and Youngstown State.
Like, who was that tight end that Ryan Pace drafted?
Tulane running back.
No. Who was that tight end that Ryan Pace drafted?
They said it was going to be Gronk.
The third round. Oh my God.
Shaheen?
Why am I blanking on
Shaheen? Yes, Adam Shaheen.
Adam Shaheen. We were all like, this guy's the next Gronkowski.
We also took Matt Forte out of Tulane.
Yeah, there's obviously Jerry Rice.
There are exceptions.
There's guys that do happen to come out of those.
I don't remember where Tariq Cohen went, but he was an impact player for a few years.
Listen, I do think that the Bears are going to address the offensive line still, and that was kind of my point. And Sean, when you were talking about these guys who played in big time games and big time conferences, I just kept hearing Calvin Banks. and as Eric points out here, Will Campbell as well. Guy played left tackle his entire career. I'm so sick of hearing about his arms. I mean, I guess there's some kind of validity to it, but it don't matter to me. Trapper Keeper popped in with the Shaheen. Go ahead, Sean.
It was a North Carolina A&T. Tariq
Cohen. God.
Tariq Cohen, yeah.
I don't want any more of those guys, man.
And Ben Johnson said during the presser he wants 9 or 10 players on this line. He doesn't mean trash. He wants 9 or 10 good players. If he can go get himself Donovan Jackson and guys like Tyler Booker, if he can get his hands on these guys, he's going to.
Hey, you realize this: we're 25 Sundays away from watching this new Chicago Bears team.
I mean, can we get to the draft first, Sean? Shit.
I want to see some games, man.
Talking about Easter, it's not even St. Patty's Day, man.
Hey,
as
man.
Cliff says right here, 6 weeks until the draft. So, like, we'll take it one thing at a time. So far, the Bears are knocking this offseason out of the park, guys. The signing of Deo, the signing of Dalman, the signing of Grady Jarrett. These are impact players potentially. The Deo one, I think there's a lot of upside there, a lot of untapped potential that the Bears, with their defensive line coach Bill Johnson and Dennis Allen, who envisions him, Sean, as you astutely pointed out, as his next Cam Jordan potentially. These are guys that are going to impact this team at a very important level, I believe. So I'm excited. I'm happy. Anything you guys want to go out on before we play this highlight and call it a day? Because I'm just giddy, man. It's good to be a Bears fan today.
I was going to say it's a happy day to be a Bears fan, and for everything that we've been through, maybe this is the great payoff. I really hope so. We got the franchise quarterback. We're fixing the trenches. Things seem to be headed in the right direction.
Fix the trenches. That's all we were saying. And then Poles went and did it. So there's nothing to complain about, guys. These are mazel, good things. Brandon. Brandon disappeared. He forfeited his right to say anything. All right, Sean, it's been a lot of fun. Everybody in the chat, man, stay and watch Trax's highlight video one more time. We appreciate you all. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe. CSP will be back with you tomorrow. You can find me, Sean, and Brandon at 4-Star Chicago Sports as well. Appreciate Trax's support on that. Everybody,
thanks for everything, Trax.
Fuck yeah, this is a great community. We love talking Bears, Chicago sports with all of y'all. And thanks for everybody that shows up, because this show don't mean anything without everybody in the chat watching, engaging, and having fun with us. So let's have a great night. Hopefully more to come tomorrow in terms of the Bears signings, and bear down.
Bear down, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Peace out, bear down.